Hi, you're watching Talking Marijuana on the John Lovitz Comedy Network.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this installment of Talking Marijuana, where we talk about all things marijuana. We are your hosts. I'm Barry Kramer. I am the patient provider at California Patients Alliance. We're a GLACA-approved dispensary here in the city of Los Angeles on Melrose, so please come and see us if you're a patient.
Hi, my name is Yamile Bolaños, and I am the patient operator for Pure Life Alternative, which is now located in Hollywood, California. And I'm the president and the founder of GLACA, the Greater Los Angeles Collectives Alliance, bringing safe access to the city of Los Angeles since 1996.
And with us via Skype is our third host of this wonderful show. It is Don Duncan in Sacramento. Hi, Don.
Duncan, the California Director of Americans for Safe Access.
Yes, you are. And there you are in the corner of our screen. Nice to see you. And today, our guest is Eugene Davidovich. He is the man from ASA down in San Diego. He's a very humble guy, and he says there's lots of people that help him out down there, and we know there are, but it's great to have you here today. And we're going to pretty much focus today, Eugene, on what's going on in San Diego. We talk about marijuana all over the country, and we do have some items to talk about today as well, but I'd really like to focus on San Diego and let our listeners know kind of what the history of what went on down there, and you seem to be getting on a very good path finally at last, and we'd like to talk about that and where San Diego's heading on in the future. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. Why don't we start with a little history of San Diego and what the complications, how they started to arise there. That's probably a good place to come in.
Absolutely. Thanks, Barry. In the city of San Diego and in the county of San Diego, this issue has been a hot one and a controversial one, and folks have been working on it for well over a decade. My involvement with it has been over the last 5 years, and with the time that I have spent on it, I've seen the city council attempt to regulate the land use portion of it, create a licensing scheme, regulations for facilities to follow that want to dispense medicine to patients within the city of San Diego. The first time they approved an ordinance that would have regulated it was a restrictive ordinance. We didn't like it. At the time, there was no mapping conducted by the city, and everyone assumed it would be a ban, especially with the implementation part of it. And once that ordinance passed and the city began implementing it, a referendum effort happened, and that ordinance was repealed. Instead of allowing the city to implement the ordinance, we had very bad political advice given to a few groups in San Diego, and they spent a lot of money on repealing the only thing that would have protected them in the first place. And so once that happened, the federal government came in along with Bonnie Dumanis, our district attorney, and eradicated over 100 facilities in a matter of a few months.
Yeah, we remember that. That was a debacle.
It was. It was a horrible time for patients in San Diego. And when Filner came in, Bob Filner was elected as mayor. He came to the San Diego ASA meeting in January after his election. He announced the agenda for this issue in the city. It included creating a licensing scheme, working with city council to get regulations through, stopping code enforcement action from the city, and actually going to the federal government and asking them to create regulations, work with local officials instead of continuing to undermine the local regulatory efforts.
Right.
And so when the scandal, his personal scandal, broke out, that agenda left with him. It left a huge void in the city of San Diego. But what the path that he set forth, that path was continued on by city council. Several council members brought back the old ordinance that was repealed through the referendum. They made a few more tweaks to it. They actually made it more restrictive. But in the end of the day, they were able to present it at City Council. They were able to have planning conduct an analysis of the maps and show which districts facilities could be located, how many there could potentially be in the city. They took a second stab at it. Unfortunately, when they were taking a second stab at it, we had about 3, maybe 4 soft yeses on the city council out of 9 council members. So even this restrictive ordinance wasn't going to pass. And it was a very difficult time. That's why in November, a few members of our San Diego ASA chapter and folks from other groups in town, we got together and we reached out to some very trusted local elected officials, and we asked for help. We said, you know, in San Diego, we've been working on this issue for a long time. A lot of money has been spent, a lot of contributions have been made to local elected officials, and very little positive benefit has yielded to this community. We still don't have licensing. We still have these eradication efforts. And so the elected official was Donna Fry. She's a very trusted local politician and community organizer and city councilwoman, has been very involved. And so she recommended that we start a similar effort as GLAC up here in Los Angeles, and a very similar route, that we start a trade association and a political action committee to raise money and hold politicians specifically accountable, to vet them, to hold them accountable. And through her help, we were able to put together a team. In a matter of a few months, we were able to raise well over $100,000 for the political action committee. We hired the best consultants in town. We hired the best treasurer in town to run our political action committee.
What's the name of your group?
It's the Alliance for Responsible Medicinal Access, short as ARMA, and the website is responsibleaccess.org. And we are actively still working on the other municipalities, but with the City Council and the City of San Diego, what ARMA was able to do with help of San Diego Chapter of Americans for Safe Access is actually turn those 3 or 4 soft yeses into a 8-to-1 almost mandate.
Great.
Not almost,
Yeah.
but
That's
definitely a
fantastic,
mandate.
yeah.
And the help that we had, the political help that we had from the consultants that we brought on board, was unprecedented. We've never been able to exert this kind of support from city council members. Even the one member that voted against it, the only argument he cited was that, well, there's a conflict with the federal government. I think patients should have access, but until that's resolved, I'm just going to vote
Exactly.
no.
Yeah.
That was it.
That is my least favorite argument.
Me too.
me
It is
too.
a pussy argument. It's a I'm not going to put my name on it until
Right.
until Dad
So
says
somebody
it's
said
okay.
safe. Yeah.
And with all of that, we still got the ordinance through 8-to-1. Now the city is working on implementing it. The second vote happened for the ordinance that passed. Looks like in April they're going to start accepting applications. By the end of the year, we are going to see for the first time licensed, regulated facilities in the city of San Diego. And the way the ordinance is written, even though it is restrictive and we don't like many parts of it, in a year, City Council has promised that they will come back, review the zoning, to make sure that facilities are able to open in the districts where they're supposed to be, to make sure that the fees are appropriate, whether if they're too high, they'll be lowered. If they're too low, they'll be adjusted. But to make sure that this issue is working to benefit the patients and the neighborhoods that those facilities will be serving.
You said earlier, we were talking a little bit about this because I'm so interested in what's going on in San Diego, just like LA, But you said that only 30 people will be able to open, and none of the people that are currently open will be part of those that are opening. So if you are now running a dispensary in San Diego, you're disqualified to apply?
Well, in my opinion, and again, this is my opinion, I believe that the folks that are out there in this gray area operating and providing medicine to patients are brave souls. I commend them and I thank them, because there are over 100,000 patients in the county of San Diego alone that rely on this medicine daily. So it's a critical part of their treatment, of their health care plan, of their quality of life of these patients. Now, at the same time, unfortunately, according to the interpretation of our local city attorney, the facilities currently, because they don't have business licenses, because there wasn't a defined use in our local zoning, are unlicensed. And so they are attempting to shut them down, as they have always been. This ordinance doesn't really affect it one way or another in terms of the currently operating places. Since the
Just
last
everyone has
referendum,
to close.
everyone has to close according to the city's interpretation, and everyone will be able to apply to be
Okay.
one of the 4 in every district there's a cap in this ordinance of 4 facilities per district. There's 9 districts in the city of San Diego. The way that the zoning worked out, a couple of the districts this year will not have any access because of how restrictive the
But
zoning is.
that'll be revisited if,
In a year.
In a
if
year.
there's necessity for it. They'll.
Now remember, at the same time, we have the county unincorporated areas where there already is an ordinance regulating facilities. There's one facility that operated for several years under sheriff's licensing. They were shut down in that last federal intimidation raid, but soon there will be another one coming into compliance. And the Alliance for Responsible Medicinal Access, along with San Diego ASA, are actively working to create these regulations in the other municipalities in the county of San Diego. We have at least 16 other cities, smaller cities
Right.
and smaller towns that have either bans or no regulations. And our goal is to ensure that every municipality in the county of San Diego has regulations allowing safe access to those who legitimately need it.
Who's allowed to join this group?
Go on, Don. Ask your question.
Thanks for doing years and years of this kind of work. And
Let's wait 1 second. We're getting you in and out, and I want to hear what you're saying. So, talk a little bit.
Go on. Testing. How's that?
You sound great. Let's go.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for doing that work. It takes years to do this, and I think sometimes people fail to appreciate the type of multi-year commitment it takes to organize a community, organize an industry, and make things like this happen. So thank you for doing it. I also hear a common thing we encountered in Los Angeles and all over the country, that people are sometimes unhappy when an ordinance is imperfect. And that's one of the things about legislation and ordinances, is that they're rarely perfect.
Right.
So I'm very happy with this ordinance, even with all its flaws.
Yeah, we've had to. I mean, I've been involved personally for about 7 years now, and the art of compromise is definitely something that you have to find a way to live with in your life. That there are definitely truths that should be addressed, and sometimes they just can't be addressed fully at that moment or ever, but you need to be able to say, we got this much and we can live with that, and let's move forward and correct the really horrible route that we're on.
You know, Barry, one of the things that we teach people to do at Americans for Safe Access is to plan in advance what your bottom lines are when you're evaluating legislation, and decide in advance, I will not cross these boundaries. I can negotiate here. I can accept a partial victory there.
Right.
So that when these things come up, you've got a sort of moral compass to go with. For instance, at Americans for Safe Access, we don't support any legislation, local or state or federal, that bans patient cultivation. We feel like patients should always be allowed to cultivate their own medicine. And so, you know, having those conversations in advance with your group or with your fellow activist is very important, so then you know how far you can go and what
Right.
compromises will make things happen, as opposed to what will undermine your efforts.
Right.
And I think the San Diego ordinance is a great example of just being tenacious and giving where you need to give and getting what you need to get.
So coming back to one of the points that you've raised, everyone will supposedly legally have to close, and then it'll be a first come first serve. I got my application in, and I should be able to go through the process. My question with this process, and I wonder if you have any doubts about this at all either, is that what we're seeing when this kind of a process comes into play now, where legislatures know the value of these businesses, is that quite frankly there's a lot of behind the scenes deals. I can give you this much money, can I move my license up forward of that? I mean, I would imagine that some of the people that have been operating for a long time are a little worried about that kind of dynamic happening, where to put it on me, I've been operating for 7 years. I don't have much operating capital left over. So if I had to pay off a public official to be able to move my application up in line or give to their donation of their charity, it would hurt. It would be difficult for me. Whereas many people waiting to get into this industry with boatloads of money, but no idea about how to be in
No
this industry,
experience.
just want to throw their money at it. So I wonder, is there any protection? Are you thinking about that? Is there any kind of plan in
Yes.
place for that?
I'm glad you brought that up, Barry.
Thanks.
Corrupt politicians the problems that many cities and states face with corruption and with those sort of backhanded deals is
Yeah.
something that our chapter in San Diego with Americans for Safe Access has always fought against and has always stood on the right, the moral side of how to conduct
Principle.
business. And even though we've, because of it, we've had to, it's been challenging. For example, when the referendum happened the first time, it was hard to go out there and tell the folks that were operating that we are opposed to this. We understand you think your roof is on fire, but repealing a law is going to hurt patients at the end of the day. This is a mistake, but we stood by that. We stood by that from then until now. We stood by the principles like Don discussed of ensuring that patient cultivation is protected, ensuring that there's no vice tax added to this ordinance, that whatever approach is a reasonable approach. And we've created this organization in complement with San Diego ASA, the Alliance for Responsible Medicinal Access, in order to hold the politicians accountable, in order to ensure that the process is transparent, is fair, and that everybody has equal access to this process. In order to join the organization, you don't have to be operating, you don't have to be a
I was going to
dispensary
ask you that.
operator.
Who's part of this
Anyone
organization?
who's interested
Yeah.
in this issue can join. There's an annual membership fee. It's no more than your typical Chamber of Commerce membership fee. They can go online and contribute, and anyone
Right.
from anywhere, for that matter, can join and have the latest access to the latest work that we are doing with the city on implementing this process. And I assure you that any consultants or land use experts that anybody can hire in the city of San Diego, those folks are the best of the best, are working with ARMA. And they are actively on conference calls monthly with us, providing our
Right.
members with the latest information and whatever hurdles they may be facing with this conditional use permit process. There's people helping, ensuring it's done right. And so back to your question about can you pay somebody to, get the application ahead or do something like that. If it can be done, we're going to make sure and we're going to fight against that.
Awesome.
But what
So
we
there's
want
a little watchdog on that.
Absolutely. What we want to ensure is that those applications are complete, that the places that open are good neighbors.
Don, I know you want to come in here for a sec, but we're going to take a quick break. And can we come back with your question or your comment
Sure,
after that?
no.
All right, good. Let's take a little break here. We'll continue with what's going on in San Diego when we get back.
Hi, I'm John Lovitz, broadcasting to you from the John Lovitz Comedy Club at Universal City in Hollywood. And I'd like to invite you to come down every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. We tape all these great comics at the John Lovitz Comedy Club, and there is no cover charge, and there's no 2-item minimum. Just come on in, get something to eat if you'd like, and enjoy these fabulous new comedians. And you can see them on the John Lovitz Comedy Network. But come down to the taping live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. at the John Lovitz Comedy Club and Podcast Theater at Universal City Walk in Hollywood.
And we are back with my coughing co-host
Sorry?
Yami, and Don's in Sacramento, and our guest today is Eugene Davidovich of San Diego ASA. We're talking about San Diego. It has been integral here in California to the movement of medical marijuana. They've been in a real storm most of the years that it's been legal, and people like Eugene are really trying to sort that storm out and sail through some calmer waters. And it sounds like we're finally getting to a point where San Diego is reaching that. Don,
It's trickling down to you.
you had a comment before we went to break. Was there something that you wanted to talk about there?
Well, we were talking about corruption and the process, and there certainly has been a lot of smoke about corruption nationwide in the permitting process for medical cannabis.
Yeah.
And an analogy to that might be what happened with gambling in Las Vegas, where there was a multi-year process, indeed even multi-decade process of cleaning up, or at least cleaning up the perception of the gaming industry, as it was on its way from being basically an illegal enterprise to being a family entertainment. They had a long process with that, and there's I want to say to people who are entrepreneurs and looking to get into this industry, that what am I now? Gosh, like a 14-year veteran of the industry of medical cannabis. I've never paid a bribe, and never will. Don't go down that path. It's a slippery slope. I don't want to name names, but I will tell folks that there's a medical cannabis operator in California who's sitting in jail right now, who thought that he would just pay a bribe and make a problem go away, and wound up ultimately himself being sentenced on corruption charges. So don't do that.
Okay.
Doesn't work.
Bonnie Dumanis has been a real thorn in your
God,
side
I know.
down there.
What a
So
biatch
with
to
all-
have to live
she's
with,
still
man.
around. So with all of this forward motion, how is the relationship between the industry and her moving forward as well? Because she has been the main impediment.
And she's the county prosecutor. She's the one that charges every patient growing and such. And, she keeps getting set back in her views and her...
Yeah, slapped down a lot.
She really does. And the problem is that her position, her official formal position, is that she supports medical marijuana. She supports the issue. She understands patients need access. But when it comes down to court, as recently as yesterday, there was a case, the Littles in San Diego, in North County, San Diego. There's a couple, an elderly couple that was living in a home and growing their own medicine to treat their own condition. I think one of the folks
Yeah, it
is
was
HIV
awful.
positive.
Yeah,
And there's just truly the folks that the law was intended for. They were not selling it to dispensaries. They were simply growing their own on their own property. The sheriffs went after them. Bonnie Dumanis' office kept the case going, did not drop it, kept prosecuting it all the way until it had to go to a jury. And the jury deadlocked, they mistrialed on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it was majority of the jurors voted to acquit.
Yes.
And even the foreman contacted media outlets and other folks out there, letting them know that this is,
Ridiculous.
It was ridiculous.
it's really starting to change. The old mentality of everything's illegal about marijuana is really, the conversation is shifting. In San Diego, jurors, folks are starting to realize that people shouldn't be in jail for growing their own medicine, for using their own medicine,
Right.
for doing something that's legal under the law. And in 2014, this summer, we have elections coming up where we've got Bonnie Dumanis has a real challenger. His name is Bob Brewer.
Oh, that's great.
He's supportive of the issue. He's supportive of the law in the state of California. He wants to see legitimate
awesome.
patients have safe access.
That's great.
And he's a real threat, it looks like, to her. And we'll definitely do whatever we can to make sure
of
this
course,
issue
yeah.
is represented well.
How does it poll in San Diego generally? Are people like, we see a lot of polls where there's a lot of favorable thought toward medical marijuana now on the part of the public, but we still get a little bit less of that favorable. It hasn't transferred into our legislatures and things, but
we have a bad perception problem, and in politics, perception is reality.
Yeah,
exactly.
And the perception right now is that there's a lot of abuse in the community, and that perception needs to change. The truth is, legitimate patients are getting their medicine. The truth is, there is a little bit of abuse, but it's not more than in comparison to other industries.
Absolutely.
There's ways
Nothing
to
like
address
alcohol abuse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's ways to address the abuse, but the focus should always remain on the patients who legitimately need that access.
Of course.
And in the municipalities, we have laws being developed to allow that access to be a part of the local land use, to get licensing for dispensaries in San Diego and in other municipalities. We have to keep going on that route and solidify it into our local laws and local
Right.
codes.
right.
So in San Diego County, the city of San Diego is the only place where there's going to be safe access.
And the unincorporated
The
areas
unincorporated
as well.
area. But there's only one dispensary in the end. You say
Currently,
that's,
there's zero.
There- but
There's
one is about
coming
to
into
open.
compliance, I believe, yes. And there's another one that has plans, but I think we might get 2 in the unincorporated areas this year. I also believe that we'll get at least a dozen, maybe more, in the city of San Diego this year that have licenses from the city to operate.
You don't think all 30 licenses will go on the first day that they're offered?
I think that there will be
That would be my perception.
hundreds of applications.
so, and it's first come, first served. So what, they're going to like spend the night in front of City Hall and be the first one in line to
You might
put their
spend the week in
applications
front of City Hall and
Yeah,
have
I mean,
that
I
first
could
come,
see
first
that
served.
happening, you know?
Correct.
There'll be people
I guess
camping
we
out.
do that for rock concerts, right? right?
Yeah, but a
Yeah, well,
rock
yeah.
concert,
There will be
you're going to get in, even if you don't get the seat you want. You know
April.
you're going to get a seat.
April 10th, 11th, or whenever they start accepting applications, there'll be a line of permit runners in front of that city hall with the
Oh, yeah.
applications, with whatever they can do. There's folks out there looking for properties, identifying them.
Right.
I'm part of a consulting group that's helping folks come into regulatory compliance with facilities. There's definitely, now is the time to come into compliance, to follow the law, and to prove to the city of San Diego, to the neighborhoods, that the perception's wrong. Medical cannabis is a benefit. When regulated facilities open up, they bring nothing but benefit to the community.
That's
and now
true.
we have a chance to actually prove that to City Council with licensed facilities. That's very exciting in San
Yeah,
Diego.
that's
Yes,
really,
that's
really,
good.
really very, very exciting.
You guys are finally.
What other things are coming up in San Diego? Is there? You're talking about creating an organization very similar to GLACA, the Greater Los Angeles Collectives Alliance. We're a trade organization. Are there? You say there's plans to get that going? Has
No,
it
it's-
started?
it's-
It has. And
It has
actually,
ARCA, but they don't. It's
ARCA.
not like
Oh, right,
us.
okay, I see.
It's not like
Yeah.
just like because GLACA's all dispensary owner operators, right? It's only dispensary operators that
Anybody
are,
can contribute to the Political Action Committee to support ARMA's efforts. Once we have licensed facilities open up in the city, then we'll actually be able to have licensed trade members and trade organization members. Right now, what we have is prospective folks that want to come into compliance with the new rules. We don't have any members of unlicensed operators. The folks that are part of our organization want to follow the rules, want to come into compliance.
well, GLACA only represents legally
Exactly.
Existing dispensaries in the
Same
city
as-
of Los Angeles. So
Same
yeah.
same as us, and our goal is to stick around for the long term and to be a voice for this trade in the city of San Diego and in the county of San Diego to ensure that it is well represented and that patients' interests are put at the forefront.
That's wonderful. That's what we've done. You know, we've been doing it for 8 years now.
And we are modeling ourselves after you guys. So
Well,
thanks for setting the path
That's
forward
awesome.
for us.
I think
and-
it's something that really works. It's
I love
worked
the
here in
pat
LA.
on the back,
Yeah.
but I have to say, as far as it really working,
Well,
we're supposed to have 104.
well, we passed D.
Right,
we
we
worked.
passed-
The city's the one that's not working.
But ultimately, it's not working because we still have here in Los Angeles
A mess.
over 1,000 dispensaries open. We just found out that.
You point out
Say what?
that it may still be, D's not working as quickly as we hoped it would, but I think it's too soon to say D's not working.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I know. No, it's
time.
yeah, it's not working at the moment. I mean, we are
Well,
supposed
As well
to,
as we want it to work.
as well as we want it to work.
Yet,
We
but
had
there's
a press con.
about 100 facilities closed, which is better than 0 facilities closed. So, you know, there's definitely some benefit. And I know some people are listening thinking, what? You're talking about closing facilities. But what we're talking about is restoring a balance that will allow public support in the city of Los Angeles.
Exactly.
And just like we want folks in San Diego to obey the law, the same thing is true. So that's 10%. 100 facilities is 10%.
Sorry.
Right,
Yeah,
it is
it's
10%. Bless you, Yami. But it is 10%, Don. But I mean, really, when they made their press conference when he had his press conference last week, our city attorney Feuer said, we closed these 100 facilities, and then someone asked him, and well, haven't you given out business licenses since this Prop D passed for over 200 facilities? And he had to say yes, because it's the truth, they have. And so they're actually at a net gain of 100 dispensaries rather than a net loss
Well,
of
I
100.
don't want to get too far off San Diego.
Oh, we're getting too far off San
You
Diego.
know, they say it net gain. Remember, some of those licenses were like Yami getting her license for Hollywood, right? That's a part of that 200, isn't it?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I could see that. That would be part of that.
I guess, yeah, the relevance, Eugene, for San Diego is that its implementation is almost as tricky as getting it passed.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. And so ultimately my question was, or my observation is, you have how many dispensaries now operating in the area that you would say are not
Probably over 100.
over 100?
Yep.
And so there's either going to be, horrible closings by Bonnie Dumanis and her band of whatevers, or they're not going to close unless something happens to them from Bonnie Dumanis or something. It's a very bizarre
The quicker-
situation that our industry has been put into.
the quicker that from my experience over the last 5 years, majority of patients and majority of folks that are on the medical side of it are want to follow the law. They want to be regulated.
Of course.
And I think that the folks that do want to be regulated are going to come into compliance. They're going to follow the rules. And we already have processes in place to take care of folks that don't follow local land use.
Yeah.
That's a civil issue.
And
That's
then
something that
we always
the city
have
takes care of.
the fringe.
Yeah.
We need to talk about the fringe because, I stood up in front of city council for years and begged them, give me rules, give me an ordinance, give me hoops, light them on fire. Just give it to me because I don't want to go to jail and I want this to be regulated in the city of Los Angeles. Yes. But there's people out there that is like, it doesn't need to be regulated. Should be free. You should be able to walk in and out. You shouldn't need a letter of recommendation.
That is a fringe.
And that's the fringe that we have to deal with too. Well, but they're very vocal.
It's this utopian society way of thought that's just not reality.
Yeah, no, and
Yeah,
everyone.
I wish we did live in that world, but we don't.
No, we don't. And in this day and age, we need regulation. For medical or non-medical, we need regulation.
Right.
And I don't understand why people are so crazy, that they don't want it. It's over-restrictive. They say that about Measure D, that it's over-restrictive. But we have 135 legal entities in the city of Los Angeles can disperse, legal medical marijuana. Where is there another amount of people like that? How can we be over-restrictive?
And the other
when we're
issue,
so...
not to get too far off our San Diego, but since we're talking about LA, is that they've said they've collected, taxes. Measure M's been in place for 3 years now. They've been collecting taxes. They've collected, they say, over $8 million in taxes. Well, if you divide that between
all the dispensaries,
that are actually paying taxes. It's one thing to say we have 1,000 dispensaries here in Los Angeles and it's great. The problem is that they're not playing by the same rules. So even though they made $8 million, that's coming from legal dispensaries that have decided they want to be legal. They want to pay their fair share. They want to do their whatever due diligence is there. So it's super unbalanced. It's never really, to my satisfaction, hasn't been addressed in our local politics here. And it is a slow-moving, I agree. I think we're moving in the right direction, but boy, is it slow.
Oh my God, it's
slow.
And when the politicians just want to do sort of, get buzzwords and some good publicity for themselves
because they're political and
they don't deal with the reality of the situation. I mean, one of the things Fewer said was that this is a really hard process to close down those that are not legal. It takes time and effort, and they have to go through the. I don't understand that. They passed a law in our city. There are only 134, and he has the list of those. And there are policemen out every day. And if you're not on that list, you walk in, you knock on their door, and you say, tomorrow you're under arrest or you're not. They just don't want to do it. I guess they're afraid of lawsuits. But how many laws do we have to pass before the lawsuits are just silly lawsuits? You can't be afraid of a silly lawsuit. You're the legal entity of the city. You should be able to fight this back. Okay, I went off on a crazy tangent. We're gonna break for a commercial, and then when we come back, we'll start back up again with some of the topics that we wanted to discuss today. Sanjay Gupta was on last week after our show, so we'll tap that one a little bit too. We'll see you in a little bit.
Hi, I'm John Lovitz, broadcasting to you from the John Lovitz Comedy Club at Universal City in Hollywood. And I'd like to invite you to come down every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. We tape all these great comics at the John Lovitz Comedy Club, and there is no cover charge, and there's no 2-item minimum. Just come on in, get something to eat if you'd like, and enjoy these fabulous new comedians. And you can see them on the John Lovitz Comedy Network, but come down to the taping live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. at the John Lovitz Comedy Club and Podcast Theater at Universal City Walk in Hollywood.
Hey everybody, we are back with Talking Marijuana. We're your hosts. I'm Barry Kramer, Yami Bolaños, and Don Duncan in Sacramento via Skype. And with us is Eugene Davidovich from San Diego ASA. Thanks so much for being with us. You've really enlightened us about what's going on down there, and we're so close and neighbors that we really like to keep tabs on what's going on. And
It's interesting how the northern part of the state is so calm and everything's all done and everything. And then, like south of San Jose, it's like, oh my God.
It's one of the, for me, that other than it would be nice to get into compliance with the federal government's slim guidelines, but the main reason for my push to have statewide regulations is so that we all know what's going on in our state. The same thing that happens up in Northern California happens in the Central Valley or down here in Los Angeles or even further down by you in San Diego. Right now we have almost like 4 or 5 different state systems working within our state.
And I feel like once we do have state regulations in place, we'll be a more united force.
I agree.
I truly, truly believe that. Once we have state regulations.
Don.
I think the overall welfare of the patients is paramount that it be uniform across the state.
Absolutely.
And, I would definitely call on those people who are in jurisdictions that are more evolved on this issue, should certainly make it a point to stand in solidarity with the rest of the state, where, by geographical, if you look at a map, not that population, but if you look at a map, most of this state does not have access to medical cannabis. So definitely remind folks who live in, say, the San Francisco Bay Area that, the people in the Inland Empire are hurting right now.
Yeah. San Bernardino, Riverside. I mean, even San Diego.
Those are your brothers and sisters who are going to vote with you
Exactly.
to move forward. So if you're up in Northern California and you're feeling all comfortable, and then you get angry because the Californians down south don't want to get on your track, it's because we're not at your place yet. And so so everyone needs to kind of help out a little bit in this state. We're a big state, and things like this where we can communicate and find out what's going on in different municipalities really help us out. And we've had people from Northern California on, and we love to keep this conversation going.
Unity is so critical, and throughout the entire state, it's important to create unity. It's important to advocate as one united force, one united voice, and always putting patients at the forefront.
Yeah,
and
That's the way it's been.
Something that gives me a lot of hope for that is Dr. Gupta and what he's been doing. I went online and I Googled Gupta, weed, CNN, because I wanted to bring up some stuff and some images. And so many images have come up. He's become sort of an icon of hey, Dr. Gupta says it's good, so T-shirts and cups and all kinds of people. And that's going to happen. But the great thing about it is, and we talk about this a lot on the show, and Don's dedicated his whole life to it. Education. We have to get out of the place where people are thinking about us as the myths that were created, to demonize marijuana for other reasons, not because of what it does, but because of who smoked it or what class of people smoked it. We need to get out of those myths and into real science, and we know now that this medicine is helping patients. So the fact that someone like Gupta has come out and really lifted the mantle, I would call him an activist at this point, because I know he's getting attacked by people for the stands that he's taking. Not that defines what an activist is, but it certainly is part of an activist's life. Being
it's a part of it for sure.
For sure, huh?
So as we went to record last week, it was Tuesday and it was the morning. So the special that his Weed 2, Cannabis Madness, had not aired, and now it's aired, and I'd love to chat with you guys a little bit about it, what your experiences were watching it, and give you a little bit of what I thought as well. Did you watch it?
Yes, I did, and I enjoyed it a lot. We've talked about this. I mean, now my family talks to me when we go to family gatherings about, because Sanjay Gupta said it was cool. So now I'm like the popular
Right.
person at the
Now
parties,
people
right?
wanna know about it.
Yeah, now they want to know about it. So no, I'm very appreciative of what he's done. I think he's opened up lots of doors for the entire country and brought a lot of education to people. And I'm glad that in this last special, because I think that there's been like a whole push to the CBD medicine for the kids, right? And that's all good and everything. But he did reiterate during that show that it was a whole plant medicine, that we need the whole plant as medicine. And it's good that they've developed something for the kids that works for them, but we know we need whole plant medicine, and we need the entire plant to get the entire benefit of the plant.
I think he said there was a synergy.
Synergy.
With the elements of marijuana. There are so many elements of marijuana, and it is bred by so many breeders in so many different ways. We have a lot of information about how it can help, but there is a synergy of the whole plant. And I know in Georgia, their House or their Senate, I think, approved the Charlotte's Web medicine,
Only.
very narrow, and for children.
In Utah.
And in Utah, and those are great leaps forward. The fact that they can at least acknowledge and put into law help for someone.
That even a portion of cannabis is good.
But if it works for those people, it's obvious it's a medicine, and then let's let it work for other people. And the federal government, well, I don't want to jump all over, but it is obvious that it's a medicine, and the federal government, we'll talk a little later, even it has now acknowledged that to some extent, and it was a surprise to a lot of advocates and activists, but it's been a great step forward on that front. But
I think the thing that's really exciting for me about Sanjay Gupta, first of all, is that he did a follow-up piece instead of running from the issue. So that's
Yes.
awesome. I guess ratings were good.
Yes.
But it's really exciting for me that to
Ratings are
see
excellent.
the coalition broadening that way, because one of the benefits of having a coalition speak about an issue as opposed to one organization or one individual is that there's always someone who will only listen to a certain voice. And people in Yami's family would have only heard this message from Sanjay Gupta,
Right.
not from Yami.
Not from
and
me.
so I know that if Oprah Winfrey were to speak up in defense of medical cannabis, my mother would be all for it. So it really matters making that tent bigger and bigger all the time.
yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think that's one of the great things about what he's done. I am seeing, as an operator, an uptick in patient visits, new patient visits, from people that have either never used marijuana in their life or have used it a long time ago, a lot older
College.
patient, certainly parents that have come in with concerns about their children. I'm seeing the medicinal patients emerge from the darkness and say, let me try this, let
Right.
me see if this will work, because now there's some validity to it. I felt that the focus of this second documentary was on the refugee situation,
That's
as
true.
as Sanjay Gupta put it. That one of the reasons he decided to do this follow-up, and it was great. Again, it was like 8 months ago he did the first one, and now he's done this one. And one of the reasons he said was to show that that access was needed for this medicine, and that it was not harming people. And the harm that was happening now was that families were uprooting and moving, because in our country, which should not happen in the United States of America, that in Colorado they're allowed to get medicine for their child. They can take their child to Colorado and get the medicine, but they can't go to Colorado, get the medicine, and bring it back to Michigan, where it is legal to smoke or be a medical marijuana patient. Let's just say that, and that just is not. He said that's just not right in our country. That's not. There's something inherently wrong about medical patients in the United States of America not being able to access safely their medicine. And he highlighted a family throughout the whole documentary, and showed their journey and how they were sort of, ultimately they lifted up their whole life. They sold their house and they're moving to Colorado.
Wow.
I have not dealt with this in a personal way until yesterday, and I sort of want to just relate this little incident that happened at my dispensary. I was about a half hour ready to close. It was 7:30 at night, and a couple came in, an older couple, probably in their mid-60s, and were talking to me about Rick Simpson oil. They were looking for Rick Simpson oil. There's very few dispensaries that are carrying a clean product these days, and we've had one for about a year now. And so some people are sending people our way. So this couple came in, showed me his rec, talked about signing up with us. We talked before we even signed up just a little bit about the medicine, what he was looking for. He was a cancer patient, and very obviously a cancer patient. This man had a very horrible scar on his face right here, and I think they'd gone in and removed part of his jaw. So his face was gaunt, receded. He looked like a cancer patient because he is a cancer patient. We went through the whole sort of signing up process, and I finally asked, I had his doctor's recommendation. When I finally asked him for his California license, he handed me, or his identification, he handed me his license. It was a Florida license, driver's license. And after having talked with him for about 10 to 15 minutes now about the medicine that I probably could get to him, I had to look at him and his wife in their face and say, I cannot sell you this medicine. It's illegal for me to sell you this medicine that I've been talking about that's right behind the door here, that I have plenty of, and I cannot sell it to you. The look on his wife's face was, I haven't ever had to deal with this. I've dealt with lots of patient problems, but I've never had to deal with not being able to get the medicine to a patient that was so obvious in need of this medicine. This guy wasn't coming in to get high. This guy wasn't coming in to cop an ounce of bud or something. He wanted medicine to help him. And the topic that got Sanjay Gupta going on this documentary of refugees really came home to me in a very hurtful, heart way. I wound up giving him medicine and sending him away because I can't sell it to him, but fuck them if they don't think I can't give it away. So I gave him some of the Rick Simpson oil, but I don't know if he'll be able to return to me. I don't know if he'll be able to go get a California identification card. He does have residence here.
It's really sad. If you live in the United States of America and this medicine is being produced and it can save your life, there shouldn't be a reason why you can't acquire it.
What were you going to say there,
I'm
Don?
sorry.
I was going to say he can't get an ID card, and we've had to deal with that at the collective that I serve on the board of directors in West Hollywood. We've had to deal with that, and people can't go get ID cards to establish their residency.
Well, that was my advice to him, but I wasn't positive, so I'm glad to hear that.
Do it.
I'm sure if he can, I will see them again. There's so many problems inherent in that. How did he get a recommendation from a doctor in California with a Florida license? Why
because
did he
there's no law against it.
There's no law against it, right. Okay, so and then their comment of, well, this other dispensary would sell us the marijuana. They just didn't have the Rick Simpson oil. Why was that dispensary? And so these people who know nothing about the 7-year history of advocacy and your 20-year long journey in trying to get them safe access, they don't know anything about that. All they know is, I'm here, you have the medicine, I don't understand why I can't get it. And there's nothing sadder, I think,
and the truth is, that's all it should be. The patient shouldn't have to worry about any of that. Just like Dr. Gupta said in the documentary, it's irresponsible of the fact that Congress and our lawmakers haven't caught up to the fact that patients should be protected who want to use this medicine, not treated as criminals.
Well, I love the pressure that Sanjay Gupta is putting on our federal government. I think he's really, as all the work, the 20-plus years of work that advocates have put in toward medical marijuana and legalizing marijuana, it's weird how it balances out, but here's one man that can really shift the balance, and he is doing that. And
thank God
for Dr. want to shout out to that man for doing it. We're at another point where we've got to take a break. We'll come back and kind of hit a few more topics. We do have a dope of the week. and it is a large group of probably white men. We'll talk about them when we come on back. See you later after this break.
Hi, I'm John Lovitz, broadcasting to you from the John Lovitz Comedy Club at Universal City in Hollywood. And I'd like to invite you to come down every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. We tape all these great comics at the John Lovitz Comedy Club, and there is no cover charge, and there's no 2-item minimum. Just come on in, get something to eat if you'd like, and enjoy these fabulous new comedians. And you can see them on the John Lovitz Comedy Network. But come down to the taping live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. at the John Lovitz Comedy Club and Podcast Theater at Universal City Walk in Hollywood.
Hey. Oh, there I am. We're
There
back.
you are.
We're back with Talking Marijuana and your hosts, Yami and Barry and Don. And our guest today is Eugene Davidovich. He's with ASA San Diego and been doing great work down there. We've had a good conversation about what's been happening there, and we're happy that things are on a good road. How about legislation generally? Don, what's going on that you're our legislative analysis?
Well, sure. I'll give you a quick update. And first of all, on the federal level, for listeners all over the country, we're going to be in Washington, D.C. April 5th through 7th. So if you haven't made plans to join us for the National Medical Cannabis Unity Conference, you should come, because you'll have a chance at that conference to sit down face-to-face with your lawmaker or their staff in Congress and talk to them about bills to protect state medical marijuana laws and reform banking and tax codes and all of those things. So April 5 through 7th, look at nationalmedicalcannabisunityconference.org.
What?
Now,
That's
on the,
a long... Was that really the web address?
Yeah, you can also go to safeaccessnow.org, but the dedicated URL is nationalmedicalcannabisunityconference.org.
Okay.
So on the state front, I mentioned last week actually when we were recording that we actually we beat a bad bill in the state legislature here in California, and it's really a testament to grassroots activism and speaking up and sort of being involved in the process at the right time. We beat a bill that would have increased the distance required between dispensaries and schools in the state of California, and increased the fine for violating that rule to up to $10,000.
Oh my God.
So we were able to beat this thing. We stopped it in committee, which is the most efficient way to kill a bill. And I'm really excited about that, because it was a real example of folks sort of flexing their muscle and making that happen. And frankly, we didn't see a lot of opposition from industry or from lobbyist organizations. It was really the grassroots that stood up and stopped the bill. So
That's great. That was
I'm
really
excited
good.
about that.
Good
The
work.
next bill we're going to take down is called AB 2500 by Jim Frazier, assembly member from up in Northern California, sort of east of the Bay Area, northeast. This bill makes it a crime to drive with any detectable amount of cannabis in your blood. Any amount, no matter whether you're impaired or not. If you can
Right.
detect cannabis in your blood,
I need a full-time
you're deemed
driver.
under the influence.
That just sounds like an illegal
Yami will
law.
never drive again.
I will never drive again.
It sounds so illegal to tell people that. Like, how
Yeah,
does,
it is. It has nothing to do with impairment. What they're saying is that even if there's even a tiny fraction that we can find in a blood test, you're team DUI, even if there's no other evidence.
And I know
This will
along
go-
with that, they're saying if you have alcohol, you absolutely will never be able to drive again, or if you're taking any prescriptive drugs, you're never going to be able to drive again, which would then be fair. I would vote for that, okay? If you want to vote for it,
Crazy.
let's take your shit away too, okay? The stuff that makes
But,
you
know,
well.
The weird thing with alcohol is that you can have 0.7 and you're fine,
Yeah.
but not with cannabis.
No,
it's
I
not
know.
okay.
No,
So-
I'm just saying if
So
they
this
want
is another bill we're going to bring down?
We're going to kill this bill.
Okay.
If you're on my mailing list, you've already got an email about it in your inbox. I want you to tell the committee members to vote no on AB 2500.
It sounds like
Because
an easy win.
2500, AB 2500. And so, because medical cannabis patients are a small group in Sacramento and in most of the state legislatures, we have to be really strategic. So the time to kill this bill is right now while it's in committee. So we don't want to have to lobby 120 lawmakers in California.
Right.
We can beat it by just convincing 4 on the committee to vote no on AB 2500. So
And
so
that's
let's
at
get on
that website, right? You want to say that again?
AmericansForSafeAccess.org, and go to the California campaign.
And you'll be able to send a letter, an email to your elected
You can
representative.
email, or you can make a phone call, even more impactful.
Even more impactful. We had some good, really surprising from how I'm reading this, movement forward on a federal level.
With the PST.
That the feds have made a major shift on using marijuana to treat veterans' PTSD. Now, we've all known for a very long time that marijuana is a great treatment for PTSD. And if I'm not mistaken, a number of years ago, the Veterans Administration allowed doctors to let their patients use marijuana in states that it was legal, but they would not allow their doctors to prescribe marijuana. But that was a step forward. It seems like the Veterans Administration, thank goodness, we're doing something for our vets. I mean, we're sending them to war. The least we can do is help them out when they come back from that experience. And so the federal government signed off on a long-delayed study looking at marijuana as treatment for veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder, a development that drug researchers are hailing as a major shift in U.S. policy. The Department of Health and Human Services decision surprised marijuana advocates who have struggled for decades to secure federal approval for research into the drug's medicinal uses. Part of the reasons we don't have the federal approval is because it's a Schedule I drug, which ASA last year was fighting against to change that designation and continues to fight. But this kind of movement forward from the federal government gives so much more ammunition. I mean, if this study from the University of Arizona, so they finally cleared so they can get from the Food and Drug Administration, and they still have to clear the DEA, but they feel like they're going to get this, that they can get this marijuana from the only place that the government allows people to get marijuana for research, even though there's hundreds of millions of pounds of marijuana floating around the country, which is the Mississippi, right? Mississippi College?
Right.
Yeah.
University
of Mississippi.
So this is going to allow them to move forward on that. And it's a great shift. I wonder how you ASA guys feel about the shift of federal policy.
We're really excited about it. You know, the federal policy is sort of eroding away, and that's very positive.
And eroding away in showing how they're not really dealing with science, just agenda, a frame of thought.
Right. Well, you know, we've for years and years we saw just this monolith of federal opposition: no medical use, no research, no exceptions. And now there's sort of a hint that maybe the banks can take cannabis money, and the VA doctors can recommend medical cannabis is legal in their state. And now this PTSD decision. Little by little, we're chipping away at these guys. So I think it's a very, very encouraging sign. And of course, this is going to be great for vets who need this medicine and will finally be able to get it.
Incredibly. We have a number of patients who are vets, and just the smile on their face when they come to us and thank us all the time for this ability to be able to get the medicine is incredible. So that's a really great movement forward. I think the monolith of our federal government is starting to break up a little bit, and
they're shaking at the roots.
Couldn't be happier about that.
That's good.
An interesting development I thought up in Washington State with medical marijuana. We've been talking about this on our show. We've had people from Washington State here. We were very concerned that I-502, which legalized marijuana, and they'll be coming online with that, I think, in June or July, in the next couple of months in Washington, that even though they said it wasn't going to affect medical marijuana patients, it affected them incredibly.
Trampled
it was
their rights.
Just taking away rights left and right. It was we've discussed all of that, and we were waiting for now their legislature to vote on a bill that would basically fold medical marijuana into their legal system. Marijuana patients, marijuana advocates in Washington State really rose up. I think grassroots really helped there, and the pressure on their elected officials looks like it's ended up with their legislature going into recess and not voting on this bill.
Doing nothing, yes. Yeah, that is exactly right.
So, although
I'm
that's...
very disappointed to see that.
You were?
Well, yeah, because that means there's no medical marijuana legislation, right? And one of the reasons that the 502 was taking over was because they didn't have an existing medical marijuana legislation. So, yeah, if they didn't do anything, they're all going to be folded in. That right?
But they're not going to be folded in.
Well, but then they have to wait another year before they bring it up?
Isn't it?
Well, yes.
I sort of looked at it, Don, like you. When you have a defeat or something like that doesn't happen, we know it's going to come back next year, and they're going to,
It will be back. The problem that we have right now is twofold in Washington State. One is that there's a presumption that I-502 will carry the day now and replace medical marijuana, and that is certainly not in the best interest of the patients.
No.
It's also not clear that they can actually do that, and I expect to see a lot more drama over the next year about whether or not 502 governs medical marijuana or not. The other problem is that the U.S. Attorney up there is already saying that Washington State has no medical marijuana law and
I
that
know.
all the dispensaries are illegal.
Mhm.
And so we're definitely going to have some sort of a conflict, I think, with the U.S. Attorney's office when they go in and start trying to bust medical marijuana providers.
Well,
So
that should be
that's-
good.
it's
That
a
should be really
bad scene,
good.
and
That should be
I
really
don't
good
like
press for them. That they go in and try and bust medical marijuana providers.
But they can sell recreationally.
I think
Okay.
and the only reason they don't want medical marijuana providers is because they're not
Money.
getting their
The
piece of the
tax.
pie, and they're
money,
going to
that's
come.
exactly right.
Yeah, they're going to
It's all
come.
about
Yeah.
money in Washington. It's horrible.
Incredible.
Typically, I
horrible.
do not go in for conspiracy theories, but I'll tell you this whole thing in Washington State is about lobbyists making promises and having to come clean now and provide the tax money they promised to get I-502 adopted. And yeah, it's really an ugly scene because the patients are the one who are expected to foot this bill, and it's just not okay.
Not okay.
Not okay. It's terrible.
Yeah, that was I looked at it. I see what you're saying that it's not good, but I really looked at it as a best alternative of what could have happened now, because that it feels to me like then you have the year, you have time again to advocate, to raise the grassroots, to make them understand that there's not that difference, and to maybe fix the bill that they obviously didn't want to vote on,
Yeah,
or
but
they would have voted
meanwhile,
on.
there's no law, and
Well,
so they're being
there's no
gated.
law. That's
from-
true. There's no
time
law.
to go back. There's time to go back next year and do it. There's always another shot at
Yeah.
another bite at the apple, if you will. So
And it's-
in the meantime, though, there's a downside to this for sure.
Well, the downside is there's no law, but we have laws, and we still have 1,000 dispensaries
Well,
that are operating. So I feel like in the absence of law, we have a better situation for medical marijuana patients than in the presence of a really bad law that takes away rights from people. So that, and to me, seemed to be the upside of this. I understand what your downside is. Yeah.
Well, even here in California, that's why it's so important we get state regulations before recreational comes through, so that they don't eat us up, so they don't trample on our rights like they're trampling on the rights of the patients in Washington.
And it's all about
very important.
education again.
It's all
right,
about
Eugene?
education.
It's about once people are educated, they can't make these statements that
It's key.
we just toss these people aside.
And
Or
all the other states, like you mentioned, that we're talking about just CBD only laws or other things, it really comes back down to just education. It comes back down to educating our state legislatures, the ones in the committee right now to overturn this, bill that's being
Right.
proposed in the state. It's important to create statewide legislation, and just like you said, to protect the patients in the state. So when legalization does come for recreational use,
Right.
we don't have sick and dying patients being forced to go to the streets or being forced to go to a recreational facility somewhere far away from their
And
local
paying
neighborhood.
astronomical prices for medicine.
And pay a vice tax on it.
Exactly.
absolutely.
I couldn't live in Washington as much marijuana as I consume. There's no way.
Yeah.
It's really sad. I think the patient's rights. We need to protect the patient rights here in California.
We do.
So we do a segment on this show, and we're closing in on our last few minutes here, called Dope of the Week, and we have a candidate for Dope of the Week this week, and it's a bunch of people. It's not a single person
group.
or an entity. It is a group, and they're called the Michigan Business Group. Michigan, where medical marijuana is legal for patients. The Michigan Business Group, workers fired for medical marijuana shouldn't get jobless aid. How cruel can people be? You don't
Yeah,
want
what's
people.
the point of that?
All right, what is the point of that? The appeal, Michigan's leading business group is urging the state appeals court to rule out jobless benefits. Rule them out for people who are fired for using medical marijuana. Not so much that you were impaired on the job, which, if you're fired for that, then there should be some consequences.
Well, yes, if you're fired
Yeah.
for cause, you don't get
Right.
benefits.
If you're
It's
fired
like
for
being
cause.
drunk on the job. You should
So
get fired.
in Ingham County, Jeannie Kemp, she was fired from her job as a CT scan technician at Hayes Green Beach Memorial Hospital after a drug test in 2011 revealed marijuana. Kemp, who has a state-issued medical marijuana card, she said she uses marijuana in food outside work hours to relieve chronic pain from lupus, which attacks her joints and other ailments. She never showed any signs of intoxication or being under the influence. There was no indication she was using marijuana on her job, said her attorney. The only complaints came when she talked about medical marijuana. That's what prompted her drug test. Why should this woman lose her benefit? If you don't want her to work for you, and that's your job, okay, I can almost see, you're right as a business owner to say, I don't want this in my place. Fine.
If she was using,
but if
on
she's
the
not
location.
using, and she's worked for you and given you hours of her life and worked for you and created this place where if she was ever to lose her job, she was supposed to get these benefits. Now you want to take away her benefits? How about if we do that for anyone who uses prescriptive medicine?
Vicodin.
How about if you use Viagra? You can no longer get jobless benefits
Oh, no.
if you're fired, okay? You can go around with your whatever,
Limp.
without any money, okay? So these guys are dopes. These guys are dopes.
They're real dopes.
They should be whipped in public.
Yes,
That's
I
my-
agree.
That's
I
my-
agree. If they're going to take away benefits from people, that got fired because they had alcohol in their system or anything like that, and they're not going to give them benefits. If it was fair across the board, okay. But if it's just they're singling out medical marijuana
Yeah.
patients, no.
So we've run out of time
Yeah.
this week. Thank you all for joining us. Please send a nasty letter to the Michigan Business Group and send a great letter to Eugene Davidovich, who joined us
Thank
from
you.
San Diego ASA today. Thank you all. Thanks, Don, over in
Pura vida.
Sacramento.
Bye,
Pura vida.
everybody. Pura vida.